Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is I Love You, issue number 120, dated October 1976. We see the cover here. It's a pretty good cover. Definitely a commercial artist. And this person was also the person who drew the last story, which is also the best drawn story. I think this is kind of a stock character for this artist because I noticed that the people that he drew in this issue looked exactly alike to the ones that he or she drew in previous issues I've seen. So these are probably stock characters that this artist draws. He can still make a lot of money in commercial art doing that. It's kind of like generic Suzanne Summers with generic Mark Hamill. Yeah, both are fashionably dressed. Cover really doesn't tell you anything. But I'll get into the story. The first one is River Girl. And our protagonists are Kevin and Serena. So this looks like it's sort of taking place, I would say in Maine, probably, near the shore there. Anyway, we see three individuals on the dock. We see two men. One of the men is sick. He looks like he's going to puke on his ascot. His other friend is holding him, very kind to have his hand right near his mouth. So he's prepared to he's prepared to help his friend more than most of us would. And the one who's healthy and holding up the sick one, he's asking this attractive young woman, kind of has an Ann Archer look to her, whether there's a doctor nearby. And she informs him that there's a doctor 12 miles away, and that she's willing to drive them to the hospital so this guy can be attended to. We get a little bit of Serena's backstory. Turns out that she was kind of born in this small little fishing village. Her father is very loving but very protective of her. So she had a very, very kind of controlled lifestyle. She was very accepting of it. I don't see any type of trauma or conflict that she had with her kind of I guess isolated and what's that word that they would use? Kind of that closed, privileged lifestyle. Sheltered. So Serena here is a very sheltered young woman. And so nevertheless, she's driving the two to the hospital. She's still with them as they're getting the diagnosis. It turns out that this wasn't a ruse. Because there are real life guys who had bad intentions who used stories similar to this to trap young women, but it wasn't the case here. Turns out the friend has 104-degree temperature, and he's going to have to spend a few days in the hospital. The guy, the ginger who brought his friend there, saying that's fine, doesn't matter, I'm not paying the bill. So you take care of him. So anyway, so it turns out that Serena and I think Kevin, his name is Kevin. Serena and Kevin, they're kind of just talking to one another. Kevin's pointing out this is a very small town, but there must be some place that must be kind of a nice place to have lunch, and I'm willing to take you with me to lunch. He's also checking whether she's married or has a boyfriend. So so he's fishing a little. He's fishing for love along with fish. It turns out that Serena is saying, she's fessing up that she's not seeing anyone. She's not married or involved in any way. She also knows a good place to eat. So she goes there. She orders for him, saying that, we'll have fish. My dad catches fish, so I know the fish are good because my dad caught them. That's definitely a little girl mindset there. but we find out that kind of holds true for Serena. Kevin is talking to Serena. Serena's wondering whether his friend's illness will ruin their vacation. Saying I don't think so. We started off with the cruise, and then we were just kind of doing a little snorkeling and a little spear fishing, kind of just taking it easy and having fun. And yeah, he's not even talking about his sick friend here at this point. So anyway, it turns out that Kevin kind of needs a place to stay. He also needs to earn a few extra dollars because this was an expense he wasn't expecting. However, it turns out that Serena's dad does need some help. It's similar to Quint in Jaws, where he says, "Listen, I can't find a good man under 50."
Can't get a good man these days under 60.
This guy's going through some of Quint's problems in Jaws, and he sees Kevin. Kevin's he's a ginger, but he sees he's a tall, good-looking guy who looks kind of strapping. Kevin says that he used to work on commercial fishing boats, and that this is something he's not unaccustomed to. He can handle the rigors of commercial fishing, which is a really dangerous occupation. Those jobs pay so much because it's something most people don't want to go through it again. So we see that Serena is very happy that Daddy likes Kevin. Again, this is good girl mentality, and Serena's a good girl. And with good girls, introductions to the dads, to the parents, but particularly to the dads, are really important. So Serena is kind of seeing possibilities with Kevin, and the fact that Daddy likes her, Daddy likes him, it's a huge plus. So it turns out the fishing expedition was a success. And they're coming back, and Serena's already cooked up the meal. They're gonna have stuffed crab. So because they're in a fishing village, everything is kind of seafood related. And Kevin's digging the music that's on the stereo, and he's asking whether it's a radio or a stereo. And she says it's an 8-track player, an 8-track stereo. So, she just puts in those 8-track tapes, and it just sounds popping. People in these places probably still have that stuff. So anyway, after they eat, Serena's dad does fatherly things. He takes out his pipe. He's kind of working on his paperwork. Kevin and Serena, they're doing the dishes together. This way, Kevin is doing an activity and he can still talk to Serena and interact with her. The dad suggests that Serena and Kevin take in a movie, saying, "Hey, you don't want to be with a boring old fart like me. Why don't you two go out for some wholesome fun?" Dad says, "You can buy my daughter a soda." And this is huge news to Serena, because she wasn't really allowed to date when she was in high school, but the father is officially signing off to this date. Kevin is mentioning how beautiful it is out there, and Serena likes that Kevin is enjoying it. She says she's a little used to it, so she's a little jaded to how beautiful things are. Kind of takes it for granted. However, Serena's wondering whether Kevin will actually try to kiss her tonight. This is foremost on her mind. So anyway, it turns out they went to the movies. Serena said it had something to do with the apes. So I'm assuming 1976, it was the last Planet of the Apes film was 1973. So yeah, they might have been in a drive-in, and it was kind of a revival. and they saw Planet of the Apes. Because, nothing puts a woman in a romantic mood more like seeing a bunch of apes like just clobbering humanity.
The only good human is a dead human.
And anyway, Kevin's enjoying himself. They're eating ice cream. Oh, this is where it gets a little weird here. Okay, so they're enjoying the ice cream here. And Serena's saying that it's been a while since she had a treat like this because, she wants to watch her weight. Kevin is saying, you better watch your weight too. But he tries to coach it in a positive way, saying that, you're so perfect that if you gain any weight, you'll be less perfect in my eyes. If she's truly perfect, she would kind of be perfect even if she put on a few pounds. So on one hand, Kevin's kind of being like a controlling dick here. Definitely watching. He's probably watching her weight, more than she does. Turns out Kevin works as an industrial artist, and he says that it's an occupation that leaves him with a lot of free time. I have no idea what an industrial artist is. Now they're talking about Vince. Vince is an editor. Vince edits a newspaper, and he got a month off. So that kind of explains why they have so much time on their hands, and why this trip has been so long. Because on one hand, the friend took a month off. On the Kevin's side, Kevin is kind of like, yeah, I have a lot of free time. So then what happens is that Kevin has to help Serena get out of the car, and he yells at her. He yells at her as if she was, gonna fall down a pit. And it turns out she kind of trips over the floorboard here. Serena falls into Kevin's arms, and Kevin was saying, "Oh, I had been hoping for this." So he sort of like manipulated this situation here, where she would have a contrived reason to kind of hold on to him. I guess he was afraid to make the first move. And we see the two are getting closer and closer, and they start to embrace. This might actually be Serena's first kiss at 23. And it turns out that she's concerned that Kevin might leave, because on one hand she's developing deep feelings for him, but on the other hand, this guy might leave on me. So anyway, Kevin is still helping the dad with his fishing company. So I guess Kevin needs those few extra dollars because he's not doing this shit for free. And the father's saying, "Listen, you two. I have to wait a little longer to wait for you to say your goodbyes, but I'm going to wait." So the father is sort of actively trying to make this match work. Kevin says that he didn't get much sleep, that he was thinking of her. Yeah. Yeah. When I was touching myself under the sheets, I was really thinking about you. So the two embrace. Yeah, Serena's not going to get that reference. And again, Serena's saying, "Listen, you're the person that I've been waiting for my entire life, but you also might leave on me." So she's still kind of going through some conflicted feelings. And then we see Serena. She's in the kitchen, and she sees that Dad and Kevin are working on the boat. And then it says that then Serena's dad comes in, and he's saying that Kevin is really enjoying living here and being here, and he kind of really likes the work. And Serena likes that. Then Kevin burst in, right after the dad, and again, this is so manipulative. And he's basically saying, "Yeah, everything your dad told you is true," and this is like ultimate good girl stuff. So she gets the validation from the father, she has the validation from boyfriend. She feels happy. They're embracing. Turns out they got a phone call from the hospital where Kevin's sick friend is. Apparently he's getting better. He's on the mend. And then they discuss their future, and basically what their future is going to be, it's kind of like, city mouse, country mouse, where, okay, we'll spend half the year in the city, we'll spend half the year up here, and we'll be married, and we'll be happy. And no, I don't see this. I don't see this working out. Kevin is a manipulative little crap. Even though some of it might seem unintentional, Serena is just so naive. I can't see her handling that type of culture shock. And also, this is going to be terrible for their careers. I mean, they're not going to, they're not going to make it. And they don't know each other. They've been known each other for 2 years. She's been sheltered by this controlling dad who basically picked out the boyfriend. They're not going to make it. Okay, so we get the next story. Next story is Come Break My Heart. And our protagonist is Karen and Mark and Eddie. And we see Karen here. Again, kind of an Ann Archer type. Maybe a little less so than the first one. She also kind of looks like the girl from A Boy and His Dog. We see Karen and Mark. They're embracing. And they look to be very much in love. However, Karen is thinking about another boyfriend named Eddie. And Eddie was somebody that Karen was seeing before Mark. And we see this is sort of the conflict. Because she doesn't really know if she's in love with Mark or she's in love with Eddie. And the two are talking. Mark is noticing that Karen, her thoughts seem, a little far away. Karen is just, kind of dismissing it. It's just, kind of one of those moods. However, she's still thinking about Eddie. But she's not thinking of Eddie in a kind of longing way. Kind of think of Eddie as oh boy, is this fucker going to show up again? So then we have flashback. Turns that Eddie, who has the same last name as I do, although I didn't get chicks as hot as this in high school. That was my fault, not the girl's fault. So anyway, he's driving fast, being very reckless, and we see that Karen is very concerned about the way he's driving. However, nothing bad happens. And we see that Karen and Eddie are kind of like at this inspirational point. They're a couple, they're passionately kissing. Eddie is very possessive, because we can see here that Eddie is basically dictating to her that, hey baby, remember, you belong to me, period. Exclamation point, because the wording is also not only in bold, but in underlined. So this is being emphasized. Turns out Eddie is 16, and at 17, he enlisted in the Navy. And I kind of don't recommend enlisting in the military, but nevertheless, Eddie did this. And Eddie is still making it clear that Karen is his property, and saying that, listen, I may be property of the U.S. government, but you're property of me, by extension. And so he's going into basic training at this point. Karen kind of has to depend on letters to hear back from Eddie. And she kind of, she waits longingly, for the mail, but it turns out that Eddie isn't bothering to write. So then it became a situation where it was sort of, out of sight, out of mind. And Karen started hooking up with Mark. Mark was a friend, and they would kind of talk, and then they would get closer and closer. So Mark and Karen started being a couple. Karen expressively said that, she's really happy when she's with Mark. She never said this about Eddie. So it's clear that probably Karen is moving away from Eddie. But nevertheless, she does feel a bond with Eddie. Because, Eddie thinks they're still a thing, and they were a thing. But Karen's thinking, okay, how can I end this thing? Then one day, turns out Eddie shows up, and he shows up in his Navy uniform. And obviously, Karen's surprised. Eddie's aware that Karen would be surprised. And Karen is asking why Eddie didn't write. Eddie was saying, listen, I was on a ship in the middle of the ocean. No mailboxes there, sweetie. So, he couldn't write to her. The two are kissing. However, Karen is not feeling this. And she's concerned about somebody seeing Eddie kissing her and snitching to Mark. So her mind is on Mark, not Eddie. And however, nevertheless, Karen isn't quite sure whether it's Eddie or Mark, but she's willing to give Eddie a shot, saying that, listen, she's thinking to herself, not saying this out loud, thinking, hey, I have a date with Mark, but I'll break that date with Mark, I'll date Eddie, and I'll see how I feel about Eddie. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll just see Mark tomorrow and break it off with Eddie. So anyway, Eddie says, yeah, I was planning on taking you out on a date. So Karen, it's a whole big thing of trying to break this off. Eddie was like, hey, listen, once you saw me, you knew you were going on that date. So he says that he'll pick her up at 8 o'clock and that he won't be in uniform. So anyway, Karen tells Mark that she's going to be busy, but that, she'll see him tomorrow. So then Karen is getting ready for the date. It turns out that Eddie likes honking that horn. And apparently it bothers Karen's dad. There was another story where another character was honking the horn, and the young lady who was the protagonist there had mentioned that her dad doesn't like it. So the writer either is a dad who has to deal with sort of like these obnoxious boyfriends who honk their horn, or whatever. So it's sort of like a little pet peeve of either the writer here or the artist. So anyway, Karen is asking Eddie why didn't he introduce himself to Daddy. Again, good girls, they want that positive, introduction to Dad. Eddie says, I can't be bothered with that nonsense. And he's smoking too. And he drives Karen to, it looks like a restaurant. So the two are there. Eddie's being kind of obnoxious and kind of being a little handsy with Karen. Karen doesn't like it. So as far as kind of Karen's question on which of these two guys she likes, she already answered this question. And Eddie's being an obnoxious jerk. There's a lot of Biff Tannen energy coming from Eddie here. Karen has had enough. She leaves. She feels like she calls herself an idiot for even entertaining the idea of seeing Eddie again. And her thoughts are on Mark. And it turns out that Mark is actually at the restaurant. Karen is confused. Karen is like, listen, why did you spy on me? Because, this is kind of stalker energy I'm feeling here. However, Mark says that he wasn't spying. And he says that he knew Eddie was in town. And he knew that you would try to meet Eddie in some fashion because you aren't the type to stand up to someone. So he's kind of framing this in a positive way, saying it's not so much that I spied, it's that I deducted, kind of like Sherlock Holmes, what was going on. Karen is happy about this. saying that Eddie was a real jerk off, and that she was glad that she was able to extract herself from him. He said that listen, I know Eddie won't be bothering you, and if he does, I'll give him some free dental work that the U.S. Navy can deal with afterwards. And Mark thinks to himself that he's kind of happy that Karen realized what a jerk Eddie is. He's saying, hey, baby, this small amount of trauma that you had to go through, it was worth it because, damn it, it helps me get a hold of you. And that's the end of the story. I think he's going to make it. They're going to make it. Mark wasn't too bad at the end, though. So, and Karen seems like a nice girl. And she looks like Ann Archer. So, these two are going to make it. Okay, before I get to the last story, there's two things to look at. There's a one-page story called Shadow from the Past. And the author is Mike Vogsberg, I think. It's pretty well drawn here. This is a nicely drawn page. We see a couple. They're embracing. Guy's a ginger. She's a blonde. She's really happy. Apparently, she got an engagement ring. So everyone in the crowd is happy, except for this one woman. Kind of looks like Josie from the Pussycats, and she's upset and crying. And she's sort of reduced to these 10-year-old girl insults. She calls the blonde stupid, saying that, it won't last. Apparently, this was the previous girlfriend. And the previous girlfriend isn't over the fact that this guy is leaving her and marrying this other woman. Turns out the redhead's name's Mona. The blonde says, listen, I just feel sorry for you. I know you were the one kicked to the curb. And, the curb must really hurt. And it must be cold on that pavement and a little wet and a little damp and a little humiliating. But just know that the man that you couldn't grab a hold of, I got him. I got him in my hooks. So, but she's also saying to Mona, as she's like having Mona crying, saying, someday you'll find the right man for you. You'll find that good substitute. Mona's crying. Mona is in the background. It does look like she's moving on. So she's talking to these two guys. I don't know. Maybe they're going to take advantage of her, knowing that she's in an emotionally vulnerable state. The boyfriend Steven asked about Mona. Did she give you a hard time? Mona and the blonde says, yeah, she's miserable, but she'll find someone else. Girls always do. So, the story wasn't designed to make girls like Mona feel better. It's designed to make girls who are like this blonde feel better. So, like, when you rub it in to a romantic rival, that's okay. So that's the message being sent there. Okay, so we got Buck's Bag coming up. We got 3 letters here. The first one is from Upset. And it turns out that Upset is dating a guy that her now married sister used to date. And she's asking, is this appropriate? Because this is causing some angst with her. Buck is basically saying, fuck your sister. She's married. She doesn't need to be concerned about her previous romantic, partner. She needs to be concerned about her married partner. And you shouldn't feel guilty about dating this boy. Okay. So the next letter is from a 13-year-old girl, shy and trying. Turns out she does have a boyfriend, but it also turns out she's very shy. And she's shy about confrontation. And it turned out that she had to cancel a date they had made to go dancing. I guess it was like a school dance. But the thing is that she didn't contact her boyfriend about this cancellation. So the boyfriend was basically stood up, and the boyfriend's kind of angry with shy and trying, but she's saying, "Listen, I'm just really shy, and I didn't call him because I was just nervous." And my guess is that someone like this probably was bullied a lot, and bullied to the point where they just don't want to, make any waves or do anything that would be perceived as negative. So they use this sort of avoidance tactic, but the avoidance hurt her. And that's what Buck says. Buck is saying, listen, you stood this guy up, you owe him an apology. Just explain to him that your shyness is an issue for you, and that you won't let it happen again. Yeah, he's saying, just kind of man up a little. And the last letter is, okay, it's from a girl. Her name is Worried. She's involved with a boy in school. And the thing is that he kind of avoids her at school. And she's thinking that it could be racially motivated because she's from Latin America and he's black. But she says that, her parents approve of her dating this boy. And I think his parents are fine with it too. And he does take her around after school. So when he's with her after school, he's not like, quote, hiding her, because that was one of the notorious things about interracial dating, was that like one partner would sort of hide the other from friends or family. However, it's not the case when they're outside of school, but when they're in school, he doesn't want to communicate with her. And she's trying to figure out what's going on. Buck is saying you should just simply ask him. He feels that, listen, if it's an issue where he's not ashamed to be seen with you outside of school, but he's not communicating with you in school, just talk to him. I kind of get the feeling that maybe this chick isn't that good looking, and maybe this guy was sort of like, okay, I'm kind of settling here, but that doesn't mean that I need my high school friends to make fun of me. So it could be kind of a situation like that, but we don't have enough information. So that's kind of Buck's advice. Okay, we're going to take a look at the last story. And the last story is Death of a Dream. And the three figures in this story are Barbara, Neil, who is the potential love interest, and we have the old love interest, Andy, who is dead. But nevertheless, Barbara is still haunted by his death and her feelings toward him. Like I said, the art is terrific here. Although, again, this artist has drawn these characters before, so I'm thinking these characters are sort of these faces here, and these people are sort of like stock characters that they use. So this is why I think more commercial artist than comic book artist. So we see Barbara. She's dreaming. She's crying. She's dreaming of Andy. Of when Andy was holding her, and they were embracing, and how Barbara would say how much she loved Andy. And then she calls, saying, "Andy, look out, look out." And it turns out what happened was Andy died in a car crash. And the thing is that the car that Andy died in was one that Barbara did not want Andy to be driving. So she feels a little bit of guilt in that she was sort of like a Cassandra, where she kept warning Andy about the dangers of this car. He kept ignoring it, but she felt that maybe I should have made an executive decision and gotten rid of this car, even though there's really no mechanism for her to do that because they're not married. Oh, they were married. Yeah, they were married. This is one of the few cases where it's a married couple, and Barbara is saying that she had that dream again with Andy and the crash, and she's very depressed about it, and she feels that maybe it would have been better if maybe they both were in that car and they had both left this earth together, because she's just really missing Andy. She walks out to her terrace because apparently, this apartment building has a terrace, and it turns out she encounters a neighbor who's kind of a young, good-looking guy. This is the type of guy you would expect a woman like Barbara to be with, and his name is Neil, and he kind of looks like Michael Landon from Little House on the Prairie. She sort of has that, I guess, Suzanne Summer look to her. So anyway, he notes that Miss Moore, as he calls her, is having trouble sleeping, and that it's a beautiful night. She's surprised by Neil. Neil's not surprised by her because apparently this place has thin walls. And Neil kind of has his ear to the wall, so he's kind of overhearing when Barbara is thinking out loud or talking in her sleep. So he's kind of being a nosy busybody, kind of following this little soap opera that Barbara's having in her head about her dead husband. She apologizes for the fact that she may have caused any inconvenience. They're talking about Andy and how he drove, and she's feeling guilty because they had been fighting over the car, and she feels that she was a bit of a nag. And when he left the apartment, he was furious, and she's thinking that maybe Andy was so upset over this fight that caused him to sort of swerve his car out of control. Neil says that Andy always drove recklessly. Okay, I don't know if he should say that to the widow, and that she shouldn't waste any time blaming herself because Andy wouldn't want that. And at the same time, she's being a little defensive, saying, what do you want me to do? Throw a party over this? I'm a widow here, less than a month or two. But Neil's saying, no, you don't need to do that. But at the same time, you need to start living. Because right now, you're just existing. But you need to live. So anyway, Barbara is kind of taking some of this advice to heart. She goes back to her job. She focuses more on her job than anything else. Some of the prospective suitors who are lining up like ghouls to date this woman because she is beautiful, they notice that she's still kind of hung up on her dead husband, Andy, and because of that, they don't have a chance to bang her. Barbara's trying to pick up her life. She runs into Neil again. Neil's waiting for her. And she's asking, why is Neil there? Apparently, Neil got a couple of tickets to the ball game. And he wants to take Barbara out. Initially, Barbara doesn't want to go because she feels that she'll be a downer in terms of company. However, Neil says that it doesn't matter because as long as there's a good ball game, that doesn't matter whether you're crappy company. Which is basically another way of saying that, hey, no matter what you have to say, I'm going to concentrate on this ball game. I was never like that when I went with a girl to a baseball game. So anyway, the two are talking. They're still talking about Barbara's issues. And Neil's kind of explaining that when he moved in, how he found out about what was going on. I think Neil also had issues with heartbreak. And he says Andy helped him get over it. And Barbara's saying that she knows a little bit about what's going on with Neil, but She didn't think it was too serious. She honestly wasn't listening. She said, "Oh yeah, I remember when my husband used to talk about you. I'd kind of tune you out. I'd kind of tune out the conversation." Neil's saying, he's still not dating yet. So this girl leaving him is had an effect on him, but he's trying to like move on. Barbara, he's just pulling the friends card. So he's saying, "Listen, I just see you as a friend, a really sexy friend, but a friend." So they go to the ball game. This part I really love here. It turns out they went to a Mets game. It turns out that Barbara is a Mets fan, or at least that's what Neil thinks, and he's actually kind of pissed at her for rooting for the Mets. But she's explaining, "Listen, I'm not a Mets fan, I'm a Tom Seaver fan." Because Andy liked Tom Seaver, and we would always kind of watch Tom Seaver when he was pitching for the Mets. So, that was sort of our bonding moment with, Barbara and Neil. Andy's still talking about baseball. He's talking about how he likes Jim Palmer, but he doesn't really care for anyone on the Mets. Yeah, at that time, 76, Tom Seaver, Jim Palmer, those are kind of like your 1-2 guys. Then you had guys there were still good guys after that, like Steve Carlton, Fergie Jenkins, Nolan Ryan. So yeah, there were a lot of good pitchers around that era. Anyway, so they're driving off. It looks like the game was a success, and then they're going boating together. And again, Barbara keeps talking about Andy, how Andy would have enjoyed this. But Neil's kind of like, "Hey baby, my name's not Andy." And I think they want to go. What do they want to do? They want to go fishing. Yeah, they want to do some exploring, and Neil wants to kind of more formalize this relationship. And we see Barbara, who is beautifully drawn here, determined not to forget about Andy. But Neil is making the case that no, you can still live and still treasure your moments with Andy, but kind of realize that the moments coming up aren't going to include him, and hey baby, they should include me. So then Barbara's sort of taking a very defensive position, saying that this guy's trying to kind of take advantage of me, and he has so many other options that I'm just going to mourn about Andy here and kind of just let Neil do what he wants to do. I'll let Neil be Neil. So she's willing to walk away from this potential relationship because she still wants to mourn her husband, and she doesn't feel that Neil is being entirely on the up and up. She's been invited to a party, but she's going to the party alone, so she's not planning on taking Neil. She has a tendency to think out loud. Remember, the heroes think out loud. The villains talk to themselves, so she's not talking to herself. She's thinking out loud. Neil, the eavesdropper, heard everything, so he knows what's going on. He's saying, "Listen, I know that when you didn't want to invite me, it wasn't me. It was you and you hanging on to this memory of Andy, but I'm going to overlook that because of your hotness, and I'm going to take you to that party." So the two arrive at the party together. Barbara's still a little bit down, but she's giving Neil a chance. Again, the art is just so beautifully drawn here. And then it turns out that Barbara's sort of having a kind of like a moment of realization that she needs to move her life on from Andy, because after all, Andy only died less than a month ago. And it turns out that Neil says, listen, I'm falling in love with you, and I hope you feel the same way about me. Barbara is saying, yes, I do. However, for the sake of appearances, I have to mourn Neil at least one more month. So at this point, she's concerned with appearances, but it looks like these two are going to be a couple. Will they make it? My guess is probably. Neil was a little weasel with his eavesdropping. But nevertheless, Barbara is, and he's kind of like pushing stuff a little too fast for Barbara, but he's not being like out of bounds with it. So, yeah, I'll kind of lean toward this couple making it, and that's it. And that is my review of I Love You, issue number 120 from 1976, and I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.